of the flood, it's going to be the same way when he comes back. Who was destroyed in the flood? It was the wicked. Who's going to be destroyed when Jesus comes back? The wicked. It's not the righteous that are taken, it's the wicked that are taken. The wicked. Some people would lead you to believe that this scripture substantiates the church being taken out in the rapture. That's not at all what this is saying. Jesus is not saying, there's nothing about the days of Noah that say that the righteous were saved other than that Noah was taken in the ark. But if you read, it says until the day that they were carried away, the day that were carried away were the people who were destroyed in the flood. So, 2 women be grinding, 1 will be taken. Which of the 2 is going to be taken? It's going to be the wicked woman that's taken. Watch therefore, because you do not know what hour your Lord comes. We'll talk about this in more detail when we get to Revelation 14. There are 2 harvests in Revelation 14, and we'll talk about this more then. But know this, that if the goodman, and by the way, the word goodman does not mean a good man, right? It means a caretaker, right? If the caretaker of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken into. So here we have an example of somebody that's the caretaker that should be vigilant, that should be watching, that should be alert, should be protecting, isn't, and so because he's not, he suffers the consequences. The word prepare comes to mind again, right? Had the people in the days of Noah, had there been any other person righteous, I'm convinced in my heart that God would have saved that individual. Because even when we look at when Sodom and Gomorrah were taken over, when they were destroyed, right? Scripture says if there's just one righteous, if there's just one, I'll preserve the city. So the Lord knew, right? Or 2, if Lot and somebody else. He's basically saying if there's just one more person other than Lot, I won't do this. So the Lord is gracious, right? But we see here in the days of Noah that the people who were destroyed in the days of Noah were the wicked, the people, and so then let's just say that you're talking with them and they go, but you know what? Noah and his family, they were reserved from wrath. They didn't experience the wrath of God, right? They didn't go through the tribulation. The church isn't going to go through the tribulation because we're the children of God. We're protected from tribulation. We're preserved from that. It's not our responsibility to go through that. So, to which I'm going to read you a little section out of what I think is a very nice little book. Not biased whatsoever. But I want to drive this home. So catch this now. Listen. So think about what Noah went through here. Noah spent upwards of 100 years building an ark that was 500 feet long and 50 feet wide, without the use of hydraulics, cranes, having to carry everything, having to drill every hole by hand, cut every board by hand, etc., etc., etc. Noah entered the boat with his son and daughters-in-law and lived only with the same 7 people for a year in a completely enclosed vessel with thousands of animals, creeping things, and birds. God brought the animals to Noah that needed to live on the ark so that in various pairs so that Noah would have food, right? But Noah still had to bring them in, had to take care of them, had to make their place, and was responsible for the care for the year that they were living in the ark. Noah was personally responsible to gather all the food necessary to feed the animals and all member of his families in the ark for a year. Scripture tells us that God told Noah to gather the food. God did not miraculously provide a year worth of food for Noah. On top of building the ark, he was also responsible for getting food and storing enough for a year. Genesis 6:21. Noah started building the ark somewhere between his 500th and 600th birthday. So he was not young when he began, right? Now, given he was obviously still in good shape at that age, right? Noah entered the ark when he was 600 years, 2 months, and 17 days old, according to Genesis 7:11. It rained 40 days while all the family and the animals were in the wooden enclosure with one wooden window, no glass, and that wooden window was likely what they carried all the animal feces to ship out of the ark. Is that one window. The ark was floating in water until the 7th month, 17th day. And they floated for 5 months in the ark after the rains were done. That includes all of the motion sickness and everything else that goes along with it. A year from the day that they entered the ark, in the second month on the 20th day, according to Genesis 8:14, the land was dry, and Noah and his family could finally disembark. It had been 1 year and 3 days that they were living on the ark with no glass windows, the beautiful aroma of animal odors and urine, feces and everything else that they had to finally eject from the ark. The entire family the entire lives were spent for a year living in a wooden container, caring for animals and with each other. Now, I don't know about y'all, that, having your own kids is one thing and getting used to that, but when you start adding married relationships, it starts to escalate the family conflicts. Every time you bring somebody in from the outside, it adds one more layer of conflict. So you've got 3 sons and 3 daughters-in-law. Just saying. Noah exited the ark, and when he did, think about this, there is nothing. So he has to create the implements he's going to use to farm his field. He has to create houses to dwell in. He's got to put fences up. He's got to do all the things that you would have to do if you were settling a land for the first time. Noah had to break the ground, till it, prepare it to receive seed, because likely, since there was a flood, the ground had been leveled and had been packed because of the rain soaking through and the water finally receding. Noah had to plant crops and vineyards all over again, had to build his house. He had to continue raising animals and raising up flocks and herds for food and clothing. Now, if you could choose to go through what Noah went through or just get killed in the flood, which one would you prefer? Because I'm sitting here thinking that was an act of love. He did it because God asked him to, because I think the easier way out would have just been to die and be done with it. Seriously. Don't tell me that Noah did not go through the tribulation, because Noah went through the tribulation. And he suffered through it, and he dealt with it for a year. It was a difficult season of life. That year of being enclosed with no windows. Can you imagine being in an enclosed vessel with no glass? There was no glass. No plexiglass, no glass, no way to create windows in the ark. And he had to live in that for a year, taking care of all that stuff. And then he had to start from scratch when he got out, because everything was gone. Anyway, I'm just saying, if anybody comes to you and says that Noah represents people who got taken out and didn't have to deal with anything, you can just look at them and laugh, because they had to deal with it. Believe me, they had to deal with it. And Genesis is very specific and very detailed. It tells us what Noah had to deal with. They had it pretty hard. So, watch, because you don't know when your Lord will come. The wicked were taken away in the days of Noah. It's the wicked that are taken away in the days of Jesus. Let's keep going and see if that holds up. Who then, verse 45, who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household to give meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he comes, will find so doing. Verily I say to you that he will make that servant ruler over all of his goods. But and if, I love that phrase, but and if. But and if. But and if that evil servant will say in his heart, my Lord delays his coming, and will begin to smite or to hit his fellow servants and to eat and drink with the drunken, then the Lord of that servant will come in a day when he does not look for him, in an hour that he is not, in an hour that he is not aware of. Verse 51, and he will cut him asunder and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So Jesus is saying here on this one, you got this person, right? You got this person. The same person, 2 different scenarios. Who then is a faithful and wise